Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start our video with a story about encountering a classic Karen at the supermarket. Things heat up further when her husband joins in, leading to a tense standoff at the checkout. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Entitled Supermarket Karen tries to reserve a checkout for her husband. Went to a supermarket yesterday. This place has a funny arrangement at the checkout. Trolley one side of the conveyor, then you walk down the opposite side to pay. This place requires a membership card. So I have a shopping cart, maybe 12 items in it. I spot an empty open checkout and approach it. There was a woman standing maybe 2 feet from it, no trolley, no goods, facing away from the checkout, looking back into the store. So I push my trolley into the space next to the conveyor and prepare to unload. Then I hear behind me, "Excuse me." I turn around and said woman is angry that I have cut in line in front of her. I was confused initially as she had no goods at all and no shopping cart and explained that the checkout was empty. She was not interested and raised her voice from her first word. There was no polite request. She then tried to pull my shopping cart out of the bay. She was half my size and I held on tight so she couldn't even budge it. She called me the R word in a loud voice. "You're a R word." Here's where I may be the a-hole. I did get worked up and did have my finger in her face in response. My autistic son, 24-year-old male, was with me, and her use of the R word multiple times with the same phrase had got me very angry and upset. Neither of us laid hands on each other at any time except her trying to move my trolley. Next, her husband arrived with their shopping cart of items, much more full than mine. He was not happy with me either. She kept using the R word, maybe 4 times in total. Husband was angry. I'd pointed my finger in his wife's face, which he'd seen on his approach. She claimed that as she had been standing there 2 feet back from the start of the conveyor with her membership card in her hand, therefore her husband and trolley should go in front of my shopping cart. He was trying to move the trolley around me, didn't work, and by this time we were yelling, myself included. He kept saying, "But I'm with her," like it means he can get in front of me in my cart. I responded by telling him I was in front of him, he's behind me. I told him it's like trying to reserve a car space by standing in it. He just said, "Do you see a car here?" Eventually, I turned my back to them and they moved to an adjoining cashier. The cashier was a bit stunned. A supervisor had arrived and the cashier began to process my load of goods. I apologized to the supervisor and explained that the trolley bay had been empty. Supervisor said to me, "It's okay, it's like trying to reserve a car space." Exactly. I said to her, use of the R word had me very angry and upset. I got dirty looks the whole time from D-Wad husband and wife in the checkout and a couple of snide comments. "You look like you're gonna have a heart attack." And lastly, "Have a nice day." At the time I was too upset and ignored them totally once I'd been served. So maybe I was an a-hole to have pointed my finger in her face. I was really mad at her and wasn't thinking straight. But she tried to intimidate and bully to get her way right from the start. I was not gonna submit. These are the times I wish stores would just ban people, especially when a membership is needed. Bad behavior deserves consequences. And our second story. Persistent window cleaners should have just left me alone. This was years ago, but another story I read reminded me of it. When I was about 14 years old, I was left at home on my own for the first time. This was a chance to prove to my parents that I was responsible enough to be left alone. Both my parents were at work. Mom was an accountant. Dad was a police officer. That is relevant. I was told not to open the door to anyone. After a few hours, there's a knock on the door. I ignore it. They keep knocking. It's clear I'm in the house, as you can see someone in the living room from the front door. They keep knocking, so I open the door to get rid of them. There are 2 men standing there. They tell me they're window cleaners, and they'll clean the windows for a fee. I said no thanks. They persist, but I still said no. I close the door and think that's the end of it. 2 minutes later, they're cleaning the front windows. I go out and say, I already told them I don't want the windows cleaned and I can't pay them. They're cheerful enough. Don't worry, love. We'll leave a bill. You can pay it later. I'm getting quite anxious now, so I firmly as a scared 14-year-old can, tell them to go away. A few minutes later, I hear some noise around the back. I open the back door, which is right next to the gate to the back garden. One of them is trying to climb the fence to unlock it. Now I'm panicking. Deep down, I know they're just trying to clean the windows, but I don't like that they've ignored me and they're being so persistent. I yell at them to go away, but all I get was, "Don't worry, love, we do this all the time." But I have a secret weapon. I whistle, and my rather large German Shepherd dog comes to my side. Usually she wouldn't bark, but she knew I wasn't happy with these guys. She goes crazy. They ask me to put the dog away. Obviously, I refuse, and they finally get the message. I'm pretty shook up, so I call my mom to tell her what happened. Mom calls Dad. Dad turns up in the marked car and talks to the window cleaners. I don't hear the conversation, but apparently it went something like this. Dad: "We had a report that you've harassed a young girl and tried to gain access to the back garden when told not to." Them: "No, mate, that's not what happened. She's making it up." Dad: "So you're saying my daughter's a liar?" The penny drops. Anyway, turns out the van they were driving had a flat tire and the tax had expired, so Dad fined them for that. It's not legal or binding, but I imagine these jokers intimidated a number of people into paying up. Good on OP. And Dad. And Doggo. And our next story. Karen neighbor thinks she owns the streets. I parked my running registered vehicle in one of the two spots in front of my neighbor's home for a few days. We were working on the garage during those days, so I had to park there instead of the driveway to make space for the U-Haul. There was already a car parked in the only spot we have in front of our home. One day, I found a towing notice on my windshield. My vehicle's registered and in great condition. It's not broken down or abandoned. My neighbor knows that I'm a single mom who cares for my small children, an adult autistic child, and my disabled elderly mother with this vehicle, and that it's our sole mode of transportation. If my vehicle being in front of her house on the public street bothered her so much, she could have just asked me to move it to park in front of someone else's house, since there was already a vehicle parked in front of my home. It's ridiculous, but I would have moved it because I'm too nice. Instead of acting like a decent human being, she called the cops to try and get it towed. I'm very upset that she tried to ruin my life because she feels so entitled and dislikes having a car parked in front of her house. I was lucky to discover the notice in time because I almost didn't go out there that day. I wouldn't have any funds available for 2 weeks to get it out, which would have been an astronomical price by then, causing a domino effect of other vital bills not being paid. I have to have a vehicle as I take care of 5 people. And if you're thinking that maybe I was just taking up a spot that she really needs, nope. She's just a single older lady with a dog and has no children. She has one car and parks it inside her garage. She never has any guests. Edit. I just saw her eyeballing my niece's car, which is parked in front of my house. It's on the other side of our driveway, so it's not anywhere near her house. She can't even see it from her window. She looked at the front of the vehicle, then the back, then the front again, and left. It looked like she was checking the plates, most likely plotting to try and get it towed too. I told my niece what happened, and she informed me that her car is not registered because she lost her job and can't afford the registration, so I had to move my car from my driveway and park it back on the street, allowing my niece to park in the driveway so this lady doesn't tow hers. I let my niece move in recently and live in the family room because she lost her live-in caregiver job, which doesn't seem to be any fault of hers. I don't have the funds right now to pay her registration. My budget's tight for the next 3 months, and December's extremely tight. There's really no wiggle room to pay her registration until maybe January. So now I have to park on the street to protect my niece because this Karen is out to get us. By the way, I don't condone her driving with no registration, and I know the law states her car can get taken while parked in public places or while driving. If she's willing to take that risk, she's an adult, so I can't stop her. All I can do is try and help her avoid this from happening. Now I have to continuously worry about my vehicle getting towed because this lady might call on me again now that my vehicle will be parked on the street every day. The slip that I found under the windshield says my car has to be out of the area every 72 hours. Everyone in this neighborhood who has their cars on the street has to leave the neighborhood every 3 days, But for how long until you can park back in the neighborhood? What are they even talking about? How would they know that you even left the area since your car will always be parked in the same area? What even is their definition of the same area? The same block, same intersection, same street, same neighborhood, which is a very big area. They did mark the tires and street, but if she calls again when I'm parked in front of my home and they mark me, then my tires would repeatedly be near those lines they mark on the road every day, regardless of whether I leave or not. I thought of writing her a letter, but then decided, no, she's been a coward, not communicating with me directly and trying to be sneaky behind my back. So I thought I should go to her door and talk to her directly. I'd say if she has a problem to come to our door or write us a note and inform us that we would appreciate it if she would not try to get our cars towed. There's no legitimate reason, as they don't negatively affect her or anyone in the neighborhood. We're not breaking any laws, and it's not a kind or neighborly thing to try and harm our livelihood, and I don't see the conversation getting heated or out of control. She doesn't seem like the type to start yelling or calling me names or some other kind of disrespectful behavior. And our last story. Background. I grew up in a very white bread village/town of about 15,000 residents outside of a small city of 110,000 in middle America. This came with all the petty little problems that come with small town Midwest life. My twin brother and I would hang out around our best friend's house, and their neighbors loved to stir the pot and cause problems. I have two specific instances of MC with them, specifically the wife, Mrs. Nelson. I don't really blame her for being an angry person, to be honest. I probably would be too if I had to raise 4 kids while working and trying to go back to school. I digress. The summer before 7th grade, my best friend's family decided to put up one of those 3 or 4 foot tall inflatable pools. Our town has a code where any yard containing a pool must be completely enclosed in a minimum 5 foot tall fence. My friend's fence was the only regular 3-foot chain link fence, and the gate had recently been broken by the Nelson's kid. So, as soon as they put up the pool, Mrs. Nelson called the police because the pool violated code and presented a drowning danger to her children. Mind you, they have a permanent above-ground pool that their kids swim in unsupervised all the time. The officer arrives and tells us we either need a taller fence or to get rid of the pool. The code states that the fence just needs to be 5 feet tall, not contiguous, made of the same material or good-looking. So me and my brother went around collecting sticks while my friend and his mom went to the fleet farm to buy chicken wire and zip ties. We then spent the next hour zip tying the sticks to the fence and the chicken wire to the sticks, as well as zipping the gate closed. Mrs. Nelson is of course disgusted by this affront to her beautiful neighborhood and calls the village again the next day. The same officer sent out as the day before and lets the angry lady know that the fence is up to code and that she should stop wasting important officers' time with non-issues. This was not the first or last issue with her and her family, but this one is pretty funny and almost perfectly encapsulates my experience growing up in almost rural middle America. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.